Hello and welcome to this introduction to HTML training session today. My name's Justin Heath. I've been in the tech sector for about 3 years now. Before that I was an accountant for the NHS and I decided to do a career switch. I far from know everything, but a little secret is that nobody knows everything, but I do have skills and techniques to be able to find the answers that I need and implement best practices. A little bit of housekeeping first of all. As you will all be at different levels in your learning journey, if you could refrain from asking questions until the designated parts of the training to be able to ask questions, just write them down. You may find that they get answered as I go through, so if you just write them down and then ask me there. Or there'll be 15 minutes at the end that you can request my attention to be able to answer any questions. And also I'm happy to pick up any questions outside of this training session. Please be assured that my goal is to make sure that nobody gets left behind, that all your questions are answered and you leave this training session happy with what you've learned so far. HTML, what is it? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Don't worry if that doesn't mean much to you now, that's just what it stands for. And at this stage on your journey, the semantics of it doesn't really matter. HTML is one part of the process of creating the web page that you see in front of you, or any kind of UI, user interface, digital structure in front of you. More than likely will have some sort of HTML to apply the structure. You'll often hear HTML referred to as the skeleton or the structure of the web page, because that's what it is. It holds everything together and determines where about everything is aligned on the page. It's not a programming language. It's pretty static in its functions, but that's not completely true. As your skills develop and your knowledge expands, you'll find that there are things that it can do, but for this point in time you just need to know that it's just a static thing. It doesn't do anything, it just chooses where everything appears on the page. I have an image just here that I think will explain things rather well. So as you can see in this diagram, it's explaining that there's three systems used to produce a web page, and that is HTML, CSS and JavaScript. HTML, as it shows there, is like the skeleton, the structure of a web page. CSS is the skin or the clothing that you put over the website. It's what us as human beings use to determine whether it's a website that we want to spend time on or not. We can make it pretty or not so pretty using CSS. And JavaScript is really there to implement changes. So if you think about what you do on a web page, you can submit data on it, you can retrieve data, you can switch from page to page, you can transfer things from one area to another. This is where JavaScript comes in. It's like the means of being able to do things, plus also choosing what you display on the web page. So I thought that was quite a good illustration of what actually happens on a web page. Why do we need HTML? HTML exists, as we just previously said, for the structure. It's what connects everything together. It's the building blocks of a web page. It's there to provide a hierarchy of the page. So you'll see as we go through this journey of the introduction to HTML that there's different elements that you can use as like a header or as a paragraph or as a list item. There's different things that you can highlight using HTML to determine the emphasis on the page, their hierarchy. You have to remember that computers are, in their natural state are pretty stupid things, and they're quite literal, so they need everything explaining to them every time. They don't have any memory, so they can't guess at what you're thinking that it wants it to do. It will literally just do what you tell it to do. So we need things like HTML to be able to convert our human understanding of how we want something to happen into a machine code that a computer can understand. And HTML is one of those systems that we use to be able to achieve that. The other reason why we have HTML, and I think it's often overlooked, and this is the really quite serious, important point to it, is that HTML exists because there's a company, or there's a body out there called the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, and their utopia for the digital age is that it's accessible for everybody. And it's deemed that whether you've got hearing impairments or any sight impairments, that you should be able to use a computer or any kind of digital device on the same level as anybody else. And HTML is critical for this, because we have things that are called screen readers, and they will go in and determine how they're going to relay the information that it's receiving from the website to the user. So I think that's a really important thing that is often overlooked by developers, because their goal is to get the job done as quick as possible, and often overlooked by companies as well. And their goal is to just get the product or the application finished and out to market so that they can start making revenues from it. Okay, next. Where is HTML used? HTML is used within what's called the DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model, and object-oriented programming is a key concept to any 21st century programmer, and it's really vital that you kind of get an understanding on this, and as your learning develops and as you progress through these training programs, you will start to get an understanding of the importance of it. But the DOM is basically the area that you see on the screen, the bit that is relayed to us as humans. HTML is often combined with CSS, and CSS enables us to manipulate how elements appear on the screen, but also it helps us standardize how these appear on the screen. So you'll often hear the terminology platform used, and platform is in reference to the device that you're using to be able to access the web page. So they have all different form factors. If you think about your computer at work, the size of the screen and how it's statically there in front of you, it doesn't like rotate or anything like that. The form factor of it never really changes. So it's very easy just to build a website in relation to that. But if you want to take that same website and achieve seeing it on a mobile device, which is normally a lot slender, and it can also rotate, we use the combination of HTML and CSS to be able to adjust it to the form factor that you're using to be able to read it. The other aspect of HTML is the structure of it. The structure of it is very program orientated. You indent on as each different element is used within the page, and if written correctly, it can be used to debug issues that you have on the page very quickly. So that's why HTML is so popular and used, because you can really get to a resolution very quickly if it's all been written. I'm going to take us to a web page now so that I can do an inspection of that web page, and you'll be able to see how HTML is being used to display what you're seeing. So I'm going to bring up this web page here. And you can see just by looking at the moment that we've got like some headers here where we've got elements that we can click on to go somewhere else. You've got a banner across the top, and then we've got some news stories with photographs at the top of each of them. And this will all have been structured here with HTML. So you don't need to understand this bit at this moment in time, but if I right click on it, you can inspect any web page with any browser, and it will bring up this information here. So this is the syntax of the page that you're looking at. And we can see here, so like this bit here where I said this is a header to this news article that we're looking at. We can see it's sitting inside this tag called a H2. I will go into a bit more like the structure of HTML next, but here you just need an understanding that this is a tag or a HTML element with an action and a bit of text sat in between it, as we can see it here. And then if we scroll down, we can see that we've got another HTML element being used, which is a paragraph element, to just section this next bit off. And then we've got an image sat inside that. And then below that, we'll have another paragraph element. And that's just got some text, as you would expect to see in it. So that's all I'm going to do for now. I just wanted to give you an idea of an understanding of how HTML is being used and how it structures it. So you can see that it's indented. So these are all in line because they're all got like equal. They all sit on the same branch of the code because it's going down in the page. So one's underneath each other. So that's it. That's all I wanted to show you for this bit so far. Okay, next, what does HTML look like? So in this bit, I want to give you an idea of what the actual syntax of the HTML looks like. If you're unsure about the word syntax when I'm using that, it's just a word that describes like how the language looks, because we're always working in languages here, and it's just like how that particular language looks. So as you learn different ones, they will look differently, and you can refer to how they look as syntax. The two authorities that really are prominent in determining how these languages are versioned and how they become standardized across to all of us are the MDNN network and W3 Schools. The Mozilla network, developing network, is used if you want to go and get facts about anything. So here, HTML elements, we'll be able to go through this and find any fact about any element within HTML. Whereas W3 Schools is a training-based platform, but it does a really good job of just explaining bits. So I'm going to use this website now to help show you the structure of a HTML tag, as we call them, or HTML element. So some of the main ones that you will use are heading attributes. So here you can see a HTML tag always starts with an open bracket, and then you write the name of the element. So this is a H1 element, and then you close that bit off with a closing bracket. You put your bit of text in between the tag, and then you close the tag off with exactly the same way you opened it, but just with a slash on it. So that's what a heading element looks like. A paragraph element. So we've got paragraph elements, they're really commonly used. And these two here are known as closing tags. So the H1 always expects a H1 closing tag on it. So you have the opening bit of text and then the closing tag. Same with the paragraph, opening and then closing tag after the text has been put in it. Here we've got BR, which is basically a carriage return, so a break, so it takes it down to the next line. But it's not a closing tag, so it literally just stands there on its own. You don't have an open bracket / BR and closing bracket to close this one off. So they're the two different types that you will really see in HTML, closing brackets and closing tags and non-closing tags. There's several different sorts of all those different ones. But the other thing, I don't know whether you'll see this here, so attributes. So the other aspect to HTML, and I'm not going to cover this in the introduction, I just wanted to make you aware of this, is that all tags can have an attribute to it. And we can see here on this one's an action, or so an action tag. And inside it, it's got this thing that says href equals and then the website address. And what that is it's an attribute in there that's applying some, giving some properties to this tag that can be used. And these are really important to be able to create that connection between HTML and CSS and JavaScript. It's far too advanced for an introduction to HTML. I just want you to be aware that these exist and they're a real key part of the connection between websites and making them as interactive and as tactile as we're used to experiencing them now. Okay, in this final section that we're going to cover now, what are the challenges of HTML? I want to cover some of the main things that you'll need to get graphs of to be able to be successful at using HTML, and some fundamental understandings of how HTML works. The computer follows the rules of the programming language, and it's our job as programmers to understand these rules, to be able to manipulate those rules, to be able to achieve the end result that we want. As I said before, that they're very simple, they're just really literal. You've got to explain everything to them about how you want that page to be interpreted and presented on the screen. When a HTML page is loaded for a website, it is loaded from top to bottom. So all those elements, all those tags that you write, they will be loaded one after another. So it will just go through the page. It doesn't go from like top to middle and then pick out like which, it doesn't say a heading is more important than a paragraph, so it doesn't put them all together. It goes from top to bottom, and that's known as synchronous loading. The main challenges that you will find as you develop your career or your learning of developing a web page, or HTML I should say, is how the elements work. And there's two different types. There's a block element and there's inline elements. I've got an image that I will show you to be able to explain this better. I'm just going to load this up here. So as you'll see here, it says a block level element. A paragraph is a block level element, whereas a link element is an inline element. So we've got some examples down here. So we've got P tags, H1 tags, UL tags, unordered list tags. But then if we go down here and we look at like an A tag, so an action tag that we saw before, that's an inline one. So it kind of does what you can see on the screen here. So when you were writing it in your HTML, if you're writing out the language, if you put something in a P tag and then put something after the P tag, so put another P tag or a heading after that, it will appear underneath the text. Whereas if you do an image tag and then put, I don't know, say some text inside another tag next to it that isn't a block element, they will appear side by side on the screen. Or you can put images side by side on the screen because they're not block elements. So when you put them into your code, the computer will interpret it and say, okay, that's not a block element. The width of it is only a third of the screen. I've got 3 images. They'll go side by side rather than going underneath. So these are some of the real key crux of HTML that all programmers battle with on a daily basis to make sure the alignment of what you want is how you want to appear it on the screen. So if you've got a block element and you want to put things in the middle of it, or if you've got an inline element and you want it to appear on the middle of the screen, or if you want elements to appear on top of each other, what we use to be able to make these adjustments to these elements is CSS, and that's where CSS comes in, and that's where you see like a good, well-styled website compared to a not so well-styled website. So I'm just going to click on this link here, which is going to take me to a program called Visual Studio Code. To be able to get a page template, I'm just going to write an exclamation mark and hit enter, and it will give me the basic structure of any kind of web page that you will see on the internet. And here you can see it's got two main elements to it, a header element and a body element. And when you write in your HTML, you write it here in the body element of it. So I'm just going to put a heading in place. So I'm going to put this as a heading 1. And then I'm going to put a paragraph in place. Some text for you to see. And then I'm going to put a break. Okay. I'll put several breaks. So then you'll see it spaced out on the page. And then we'll put another heading here. So let's do this one as a heading 3. This is a heading 3. Let's put another paragraph in place. And the ubiquitous notation of hello world. Put that in place. And then let's put some more breaks here. And then let's put one more heading in. So heading 5. What is your favourite fruit? Question mark. And then I'm going to put in an ordered list. Like this. And then you put elements inside this list. Like this. So I'm going to put apple. Let's just copy that 3 times. Peach. Pear. I hope I've spelt all them right. Right, and now we've done that, we've got enough there to be able to put this onto a web page. So if I put them side by side, we've got our header, header 1, and then we've got some text, and we've got all these spaces in between it, and header 3, and again, and then you've got your unordered, you've got your ordered list down here, so it's got it numbered. I hope you've enjoyed this training session on an introduction to HTML. I welcome any questions at all, particularly on why I created the presentation in the way that I have done, because I know it's a bit unorthodox, and maybe why I chose those 5 subject matters to cover in an introduction to HTML. But any questions are welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.